Duran gets dropped by a De Jesus left hook, just like it happened in the first fight.
Yeah.
And eventually the heat and Duran's heat eventually wore De Jesus down, and Duran scored an 11th round knockout. And by the time the fight was over, I was just enthralled. The energy that radiated from the TV screen shot out and went into me. And I ran around the house I ran to my sister's room, and I started throwing punches in the air.
Nice.
Look at me, I'm Duran. Of course, she looks at me like I'm nuts, and just like any normal human being would if they see their little brother do that. But I was nuts for boxing, and it lit a fire inside of me that burns to this day and will burn until the day God takes me home.
Right. You didn't give me your idols. Any idols? Any boxing idols?
Well, Alexis Arguello was one. Roberto Duran. Miguel Canto was a fighter that I really admired. He was the guy who made me admire the small guys so much. Of course, Muhammad Ali was the overarching figure of boxing at that time. I had Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard. There were all sorts of guys that fought on the weekends on free TV that sort of formulated the foundation for the love of the sport that I still express to this day.
You think that what's hurting the sport today is not having the accessibility that you had as a child, turning your TV to free TV, like you said, going right to ABC and seeing fights on network television?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even though we live in a completely different TV universe today with cable and pay-per-view and everything like that, still the biggest audiences in terms of volume are still to be found on free broadcast television. And what they did was they set the stage by introducing the fighters and their stories. Like for instance, Ray Boom Boom Mancini.
Oh yeah.
His story of winning the championship for his father, who never got a chance to get a title.
Yep.
Those up close and personal deals with Howard Cosell, where they profile the fighters not just as fighters but as human beings. People can relate to the stories of boxing. All boxing has to do is market itself correctly and introduce these guys to the public at large and allow them to follow the stories from beginning to the championship and beyond. And that's what's wrong with this sport. Major League Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, they have all their premier events on free television or on basic cable. What does boxing do? They put the biggest events on pay-per-view, the smallest access possible, and people have to pay to see it. And that's just wrong. It really is wrong, in my opinion. And boxing can really do, it has a superior product, but it has inferior marketing.
Great. You and I have talked in the past about the Boxing Hall of Fame, about the voting for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Why don't you give the audience an idea of how you got involved with it, how you became a voting member, and one of the head historians who is called upon now in terms of who should be voted in, why they should be, and so on.
Well, the way I became an elector was just the product of initiative. I went up to Jeff Brophy, who is one of the guys who runs the Hall of Fame. We've known each other, probably about 15 years up to that point. And I went up to him and I said, how do I get to be an elector? I think I have the knowledge, I have the video collection and all that and being that I was trained as a journalist, where you have to throw as much of your biases away as possible, I thought that I had the tools to render a judged opinion. And he basically said, just write to the Hall of Fame, explain your reasons why you feel you should be an elector, and then the screening committee would say up or down. And 3 months after I sent the letter, I get a letter in the mail saying, "Dear elector, welcome to the 2001 voting process." And I was just overjoyed. And I hold it as a great privilege because you are determining the ultimate destiny of a great fighter. Does he deserve enshrinement? Does he deserve immortality? And I feel that while the process has improved over the years, there were times where the results of the elections brought not such good publicity to the Hall of Fame.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Again, we're on the phone with Lee Groves, the author, and we're talking about his book, Tales from the Vault, a celebration of 100 boxing closet classics. Lee, how did you get involved in the business as a journalist?
Well, again, it was initiative. I contacted Ring Magazine in the late 1980s, and I had always read the Rings Around the World section where they have fight reports from all over the world. And I noticed they didn't have a West Virginia correspondent. And I called the guys up at Ring Magazine, and I said, would you mind if I attended a few cards for West Virginia and write them up? And they said, sure, So I did, and along the way, I let them know, maybe if I could do a feature for you someday, And it came a lot sooner than I thought, because one day they called and they said Wes Moon was working on a feature on the infighting between the sanctioning bodies during the time of Tyson Spinks. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, he had to quit the job in the middle of the job, and they said, would you want to give it a try? And I was in stunned silence. I go, wow, this is my chance, And after a few seconds of silence, the person on the other end said, well, do you want to do it or not? And that kind of jolted me out of my trance. And I said, sure, I would. And so over the next few weeks, I went about digging and produced the story, and they loved it. And because of that, I earned the chance to write another dozen feature articles for them. So really, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Not at all.
People ask me, how do you get into the sport? And they go, just ask, and maybe they'll say yes.
All right, Lee. We know you've seen a ton of fights. I mean, we know about your book right here. But last night's fight, Juan Manuel Lopez fought Bernabé Concepcion. And they were talking to about him as being another great fighter out of Puerto Rico. And I know you've seen fighters out of Puerto Rico like Gomez, Benitez, the list goes on and on. Trinidad, Carlos Ortiz. I mean, we can go on and on how many great fighters came out of Puerto Rico. What do you see out of Juanma as of last night's fight? What do you see out of Juanma, and do you think he has potential to be amongst those guys?
He has the potential, sure. We saw both the good and the bad of Juanma Lopez last night. You can see by his first round performance, actually you can encapsulate his good and bad points in that first round. First of all, he's a tremendous offensive force. I mean, he really lets his hands go. He's got real good pop in the left cross. But at the same time, he is vulnerable. And he was in the middle of trying to finish Concepcion, and he gets nailed by an out-of-left-field left cross that dumps into the canvas. And, to Juanma's credit, he got up, he settled himself down, he went out in the second round, and he took care of business. Mm-hmm. And strangely enough, the final knockdown in which he hits him with a left, and Concepcion starts to run toward the neutral corner, or run toward his corner, and Juanma chases after him. The first thing that came to my mind was Hagler versus Hearns, the way Hagler ran after him.
Good analogy.
My brother said the same exact thing.
Really?
He said the same exact thing.
But yeah, Juanma is an exciting fighter. I don't know if he is a long-term fighter, but that remains to be seen. He's still relatively young. He has some big fights coming up with Rafael Marquez and possibly Gamboa down the road. He has already established the foundation of what he is. Now we'll find out what he does with it against the best opponents.
Okay.